Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction and recovery. Join your hosts, Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, as they break the silence and speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your Friends in Recovery.
Hey everybody, welcome to Friends in Recovery Podcast. I am the Podfather. I'm sitting here with Jersey Ed.
That's right. Hello, everybody.
And we're podcasting live from Sweet Studio and with the lovely Sweets producer extraordinaire.
That's it.
In lovely Beverly, Massachusetts. We're
you
no longer at Studio 21,
No.
Ed.
Look at this. It looks a little different here, Mike.
That's a lot different. What a beautiful, beautiful venue this is.
This is built for us.
This was built just for us.
You and I, the Podfather and Jersey Ed.
That's right. By Sweets himself.
That's right. And we have a green room in the back now.
Yeah, we have a green room. We have different colors,
different
lights,
colors.
right?
Yeah, everything looks good.
Yeah. And I want to just take a moment and thank Dave Garofalo.
Yes.
And Ed Sullivan and Mr. Jonathan from Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We're very fortunate, I think, to have started out almost 2 years ago, Ed.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
22 months ago up there at Studio 21 up in Salem, New Hampshire, and we learned a lot. We were given a lot of support.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna miss those guys, although we both smoke cigars, and so doesn't Sweet, so I'm sure we'll be spending a little time up there.
Yeah. But the cigar smoking's still going to keep going on in the studio, in Sweet
Absolutely.
Studio, and all the good information too. We can't forget all
Absolutely.
that, all the great guests that we always have. It's going to be a little bit different format. You're going to give, I think we're going to get more content and more information out because of the new the new area that we're in and the new studio that we're in, and also Sweets. He's nobody knows you, so everybody was used to our other producer.
Yes.
So who are you? What are you? What do you do?
Well, we are Sweets Productions, and right now we are providing a podcast studio for you gentlemen to do the Friends in Recovery podcast.
Yes,
But this was specially designed for you, for your efforts to communicate with everybody that's out there in recovery.
And we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Big
Happy
time.
to do it. Happy to do it.
You know, moving forward, and all kidding aside, we were very fortunate, I think. Ed and I were sitting up Two Guys Smoke Shop up in Salem, New Hampshire, which is right below Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. And Ed came up with an idea of doing some podcasts because Dave Garofalo has a podcast studio, Studio 21. And Ed and I had been there dozens of times, smoking cigars, chatting, just reminiscing. And Ed came up with the idea of having doing a podcast. We talked to Dave and Ed Sullivan and Mr. Jonathan, and off to the races. And we learned a lot.
We did.
And great people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ed and Sweets have been friends for many years, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. We have.
Mike Sweets is without a doubt one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet.
Absolutely. And
Very knowledgeable.
You'll hear that throughout the show because he's going to add a lot of content to this show.
A lot of color.
Yeah, a lot of color. Absolutely.
Right. He's going to be our color guy.
Yes, he is. Yes,
right?
he is.
Right. He knows a lot about recovery himself.
Yep.
He knows life on life's terms, and I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a real good venue.
Yeah. Real quick before we get into, maybe we'll have Sweets talk a little bit about himself.
That'd be nice.
We can go
That'd
just
be
hang
nice.
out in the green room and let him talk.
That'd be
the
good.
rest of the show. But I want to thank Genesis House for setting this beautiful studio up now. Genesis House was a big advocate and a big supporter in getting us this studio. Thank you, Genesis House and Taylor. And if you enjoy the Friends in Recovery podcast, join us for Friends in Recovery community supported events. We hold monthly gatherings in Florida and New Jersey and Massachusetts now. Check out our Facebook page for updates. Follow us on our Facebook page for updates and subscribe on YouTube and any of your podcast catchers. And as always, we're always looking to feature new recovery stories and professionals who are taking, a fresh approach to the addiction treatment and recovery. Reach out on our Facebook page for more information. And you think I would have never read that before.
Wow.
I guess I'm just in awe at this new studio. Do you smell that? It's the smell of brand new studio.
That's right.
Well,
what smells better than that?
That's right. Well, we're
much.
very blessed. I mean, in recovery, there's change, there's gifts, and we have to kind of go with the flow. And we just decided that this would be better for you people, you guys, men and women out there, to get more content and to understand more and to get everything out. So that's why we did make this change. And as in recovery, change is good, right, Mike?
I think it's
we've changed over the years. I mean, I know you probably 10 years, and Sweet's probably 14 years, give or take. And we've seen changes amongst us all. And recovery is about change and growing and getting better and understanding different things in life. So.
Absolutely. The main purpose of this podcast isn't about making money or blowing our own horn or pumping our ego. It's about helping people, and we've helped a lot of people, and that's what's important. Not only with recovery, but with mental health issues, and we've been getting some nice emails and correspondence from people across the country.
Absolutely.
And abroad.
Yep.
And I really believe that that's something that's only going to continue.
That's right. Well, about our listeners know about myself. They know what I do and they know what you do.
Correct.
You're a police officer and we help everybody in recovery. But who is Sweets? Sweets Podcast Studio? There has to be the man behind the studio. Who are you, Sweets? Why would we have you on the show as a expert guest?
Well, I am a person in recovery myself, which is one of the reasons I'm here.
Yep.
And as a person in recovery, I did start an organization about 10 years ago working with families. And so we do interventions. We do a variety of different services to help people get into treatment and find placement. And, as a person in recovery, I found I was suited for this work. Mm-hmm. Like yourselves, just being able to, speak for those that can't speak for themselves and to try to help the individuals out there that are struggling with substance abuse, whose families want them to get help. And maybe they're just not ready or
mm-hmm.
they're just not aware of what's available to them. So, that's what I do on a daily basis. And then being a part of this podcast or being a part of the studio was just to give access to the folks out there that are listening to the services and the options that you guys make available. Mm-hmm. So, that's it. It's my passion, and I enjoy doing it, and I'm really happy that I got you guys here and that we can give folks some of the information that you're going to be giving them.
Absolutely, and you're still just like our producer at the other studio. You are hidden. We don't even know you're there.
That is correct.
I think that's a signature move.
I'm always here in the background.
That's right. You'll hear him chime in from time to time. Sweets, why don't you give out your company information too? Because but besides this lovely podcast studio, you do interventions. Let us know about that too.
Yeah. So our company name is Bay State Recovery Services, and it's baystaterecovery.com. So all of our services and all the stuff that we do is listed on our website. Our phone number is 1-800-270-2302. And we are located here in Beverly as well. But we work with families all over the country, in a variety of different situations.
And I've used Sweets plenty of times. He goes by another name in the real world.
I do.
And you'll have to call him to find that name out. But him and I have worked in plenty of cases together. He's an excellent interventionist. One thing I did learn from Sweets a bunch of years ago when I came into this, and I knew families were important because I grew up in the addiction field learning about families, but Sweets kind of drove it home that you need to work with the families. Mm-hmm. And intervention isn't about going in there, getting a family all riled up, grabbing the addict and throwing them into treatment, and then life goes on. You do a little bit more than that.
Well, that is the goal. The goal is, we get this family system that over the years has become, sick with their loved one. So for myself, I was like a human tornado within my family. And so my family had to adjust, and they had to learn how to defend against me and how to deal with me. And so they got sick along the way. And every time I went to detox or treatment or jail or wherever I ended up, I would come back and they hadn't really done anything to change or grow or heal. And so we all just kind of fell back into our natural gait, that really natural, unhealthy gait that we all had. And so, when I decided to go down this road working with families, it was to try to change the family system so that they could respond to addiction differently. They could offer different resources and help to their loved ones. And more importantly, so that everybody could get well.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's really the goal of a family-focused intervention, which is what we do.
Absolutely.
Having the opportunity to provide services to people in my therapy business, and as a retired cop, as a cop, you help people every day. That's what you do. That's what you're out there for. I can honestly say I'm a good judge of character, and when you meet somebody with the abilities and capabilities and knowledge and experience that Sweets has, it was an easy transition to come here because it's so comfortable. I feel like I've known Sweets for a decade. I mean,
I know.
Met some of the family members, lovely family. Just everything he just said, it comes to suffice what type of person he is. Earlier we were talking amongst ourselves about, people being in jail and, are they good people, are they bad people? And I thought to myself, how many times when I used to walk the tiers in Billerica, I could have been here for the exact same thing some of these people are doing time for,
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good to understand society and the ups and downs. And that's why I think people that are in this field that help people, if they've been through every gambit, if they've been up and down and sideways, which we all have been with recovery, and then our families, and then we come out the other end with an education, with knowledge, and providing services that we provide, which are very unique services in the sense that we know every angle. No one's going to bullshit us. No one's going to tell us something, and we're going to say, oh, is that right? Oh, good. And we're not going to be bullshitted. No one's going to bullshit Sweets. No one's going to bullshit you, Ed, or me. No. And that's what we need for a successful recovery for people. And if you're out there listening and you have family members that are suffering and you're sick and tired of their suffering, give us a call. You can call me at my practice, Therapy Services, 978-459-4884. You can contact us through the Friends in Recovery podcast as well. Yep. Genesis House, and I know Sweets has also has a phone number of his business.
Yeah, which will all be in the show notes at the end. Just kind of go through the show notes.
So feel free to contact us for anything.
Absolutely. But this show is going to stay the same. It's going to get all the information out. Just the scenery. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live, you'll see it a little differently. But everything's going to stay the same. And I know we're talking about Sweets here because our listeners don't know who he is. So we'll probably this will be the only show we ever talk to him, and then we'll just cut him off.
Yeah,
because it's about us, right, Mike?
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But it just adds another dimension to the recovery aspect. This show is doing really well. We're helping a lot of people. A lot of people are getting treatment all over the world, all over the country. I don't know about all over the world, but all over the country, and it just adds a little bit more to what we are doing here. We always want to kind of, like I said, grow in recovery and kind of figure out what the next best step in life is. And here it is. We're here to kind of give you guys more information, better email, a little bit more information on what's going on. I do have, speaking of emails, I have an email. I have to look for it. Talks amongst us, guys. And I'm going to look for the email that I lost somewhere.
All right. So if you're concerned about what show you're watching, you'll notice Ed changes his shirt every 20 minutes. So, you might see Ed start off the show with one shirt on, and then all of a sudden he doesn't have a shirt on, and then before you know it, he has a new shirt on.
Sweets, you might have that email. Can you... This is all done on a fly here, so... he might have that email. I do want to read this.
Is this the one
email.
from Texas?
This is the one from Texas, and that's a good producer. He kind of gave me the cue to read this email. He knew this email was really important, and that we got this email from somebody. So this is when we were at the other studio. So I'm going to read the first line real quick. Mike, the Podfather, Ed, Jersey Ed, and Ed, producer extraordinaire. A big howdy. From Texas to the members of Friends in Recovery podcast. Just had to drop you guys a line to thank you so much for making Friends in Recovery podcast a real joy to listen to. I'm just another run-of-the-mill drunk who has been blessed with recovery through the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a faithful listener to your podcast. And it's signed Brian C. Brian C. goes on to talk about a little bit about what he did and where he came from. But a few shows ago, we used to do a sobriety countdown or a sobriety time takes time.
Right.
And he asked me if I can read his sobriety date.
Sure.
So his sobriety date is August 17th, 2017. He said, I'm a baby. But you know what? He does it the exact same way all three of us do it in the studio, one day at a time. Right. So Brian C., if you're out there listening, thank you very much for supporting us.
That's right.
And thank you for being a faithful listener. And get a hold of us. We love to hear him. If you can read this email, we'd love to hear him on this show.
Right. If you have 1 day of sobriety, we all have the same amount of sobriety.
That's right.
Friends in Recovery podcast, podcasting live from the lovely Sweet Studio in Beverly, Mass. We'll be right back.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey, welcome back, Friends in Recovery podcast. I am the Podfather.
And I'm Jersey Ed.
Yes, he is.
What was that?
He is.
Jersey Ed. Do you need me to go get another guest host? I mean, a host for you? A co-host for you?
I think it might be a good idea.
Oh, really?
Once in a while, we'll throw someone else over there.
That's right. Maybe get a pretty-looking girl to sit here instead of me. Our listeners, our viewers might like that. So
no, we were just talking about enabling before we came back from the break, and if you're an enabler, how's this? You are an enabler if ... Yeah, and
send us the email.
That's right.
Get all those emails.
If you're giving your loved one booze and drugs and money to buy booze and drugs and not holding them accountable for any of their actions, you are an enabler. If you're afraid to put your 40-year-old child out in the street because you're afraid something bad will happen to them, you're an enabler. And you know what? You also love your kids, so it's a very close line. Wouldn't you agree?
It's a hard job, yeah. And I'd be curious to hear what your ... is, Sweets, as far as enabling. If you're an enabler, if...
Well, I mean, most enablers are just family members who love their loved one, and they're trying their best to help using whatever resources or tools they have. I mean, most of the parents I sit with, they are loving their child. Mm-hmm. Most of the family members, they're loving that person. They're using what would normally be considered love. Like, let's say I fell on hard times and I was a friend of yours, and I came and I said, hey, listen, I lost my job. I can't afford to pay my rent. Can I stay at your house for a little while? And of course you like me, so you'd say, yeah, absolutely. Why not? I stay at your house and I need to get a job and I need to save up enough money to get an apartment. How long would you say that would take?
A couple months.
3 months.
90 days.
Yeah, 90 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So 18 months later, I'm still at your house, right? I got a brand new watch. My car's got rims on it, and I'm not going anywhere, right? So now you'd be getting to that realm of like your support is enabling me to not move forward, right? Mm-hmm. It didn't start off as enabling behavior. Right. It's not like you were doing it for the wrong reasons. Yeah. It's not like you're trying to keep me sick. You're just trying to help me. Yeah. But I didn't use your help. And so as an addict, what I would do is I would use whatever resources were around me to continue surviving in my addiction. And my family loved me, so they provided me with resources. Right. And that's... I tend not to like the word enabler because it comes off as like a derogatory term, like you're an enabler or an excuse for the family. Oh, well, I'm the enabler.
Right.
But, in the end, it's just love and support.
I couldn't agree more. And I always tell family members that when they say exactly that. And she's the enabler and he's the enabler. And I always say, listen, enabling and love, they're close. They parallel each other.
Absolutely. If you want to learn a lot about enabling, there's this book by this guy, Michael Wilson. Jr.
I know that guy.
You know that guy? Do you know him?
Yeah.
This is a great book. I didn't read the whole book, but I thumbed through it, and every time I open it up, I get more and more about it. It really is. Sweets wrote the book, and if you can see it, or if you can, we'll explain it. It's Loving Lions by Mike Wilson, and it's really about the families. Mm-hmm. It's about the lion who would be the addict,
yeah,
and how we tiptoe around that person. Mm-hmm. And loving a lion is really hard.
Yeah, how to love it appropriately. I mean, the other analogy is how do you hug a porcupine?
Yeah,
very carefully.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in real life, I don't think that should be done. We should love each other on an unconditional basis and support them whatever they do. But when you throw addiction into it and you throw the craziness of life and trying to keep your son or daughter alive. Mike and I have loved ones that were in that are in recovery, and it was hard, man. Both of us had to step back and say, can somebody take over here and do something for my loved one? And that's that's tough. So if you are going through the enabling and you don't understand it, Loving Lions, it's available on Amazon.com. And just look for it. It's an easy read. It's a great read.
Great read.
Very, very informational.
Buy as many as you can.
Buy them all up.
No, it really is an easy read, and it really is an interesting book. You don't even have to be in recovery to enjoy this book because it's a view of the addiction from an addict's point of view, and from an addict's survival, and from an addict's reversal into successful recovery, and not only that, but then giving back and helping. And it's amazing because everybody likes a happy ending. I have a lot of friends that don't have happy endings. I have 5 close friends that have buried their sons in the last 7 years. And you know what? It's awful. And let me tell you, when you lose somebody that's just starting out on life because of a opioid epidemic, and it's just a tough place to be. So to see a success story, to have somebody who's been there, survived it, not only survived it, stepped up and said, hey, yep, that was me, but here I am now, and I'm going to write all my experiences in a book. I'm going to talk about everything from A to Z. I'll tell you, what a great read. I started reading that book. I swear the first 3 hours I read it, I was just loving it, and it really is.
And you only got to page 4.
Yeah, page 5. I'm on page 5.
Page 5, okay, page 5.
It's a slow read.
Yes.
No, it's really a fast read,
yes.
but it's well written, and the way it was put together, there's some good stories in there, so some happy things, some sad things, but more importantly, it's a success story.
Well, the one thing about enabling, I think, and we all do it. I don't care if you're in recovery or not. The one thing about enabling is, and us in recovery, we get to check ourselves and stop it immediately. Not immediately, but stop it somewhere down the road so it doesn't go too far. Is that life goes on. We're at our jobs, we're traveling, we're doing interventions, we're helping addicts, and next thing you know, you come home, you're like, wow, I didn't really see that happening here. And that's what happens, and we're the people in this. Can you imagine? You don't know anything about addiction, folk. All you guys who are listening out there, the families that are listening, you don't know nothing about addiction, and you're not in it. You might be a banker, you might be a lawyer. This disease does not discriminate. Black, white, rich, poor, it doesn't matter. It's going to come after your loved one, and it's going to take them, and slowly and discreetly too. And this disease loves enabling because that's what it feeds off of. That's what it thrives on, and that's what fucking kills these poor people when it comes down to
right.
The end
And the people that die, I mean, it's awful, and you don't want to see anybody die. But then the family has to live the rest of their life every day, 24/7, 365, knowing or not even knowing sometimes that did they do everything they could. There's a lot of guilt that goes around. I sit with people in therapy that feel so guilt-ridden because their loved one didn't make it. And they did everything possible they could do. And sometimes it's hard to accept that role, that you did do everything you could do, And, people have a difficult time accepting that. And then they got to live with that the rest of their lives. Very painful. And if you're an addict out there, you're selfish. Let me tell you right now, you're one selfish motherfucker because that's what we are. We're selfish. It's all about us. I used to say, I'm not hurting anybody. I live alone. Who am I hurting, Well, I was hurting everybody. And, I don't do that anymore. And to tell an addict that, they don't want to hear it.
No. You can tell them until they're blue in the face and, it doesn't register. There has to be some kind of bottom or some kind of low point in their life to just make them, what do they call it? A moment of clarity. Isn't that what we call it in the rooms? A moment of clarity. And that moment of clarity can happen for 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days.
2 decades.
Well, no, that moment of clarity, we have a small window usually, and then it closes and that disease takes over. And I remember my moment of clarity. I was in a place where I shouldn't have been, and I just ended up seeing, like, what am I doing here? Like, what is my life about? I have 4 kids. I'm blowing money like I was, Rockefeller, and we were on food stamps at the time. And it was horrible. I woke up and I'm like, this is not good. My moment of clarity, I called somebody and they told me exactly what to do. And I did it. And I ended up almost not doing it because it was this close of that window closing. That window closes really quick. Am I right, guys? I mean, which is intervention, sweets. it just closes that fast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the chapters in that book called Moments of Insanity, you know, you were talking about moments of clarity. That was just every now and then.
Yeah.
Everything else was insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and I got to say that it was so hard to reach out for help because, you know, just like everybody else, I wanted to try to fix it on my own before I gave up and said I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to manage it. I wanted to go back to being able to be normal. I wanted to go back to being able to drink like everybody else and, you know, play with drugs instead of being dominated by them.
Yeah.
So I kept trying. I wasn't necessarily trying to get sober. I was trying to get normal.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't until I realized that wasn't an option and that I had an illness that I was open to it. But that took a lot of work.
It took a lot of work and a lot of heartaches amongst the families for each one of us here.
Absolutely. And as we all know, booze and drugs will take you to places you don't want to be, doing things you don't want to be doing, with people you don't want to be with. Yeah. And, you know, I was never better than anybody that I associated with. And I never looked at it that way. But when I look back, now that I'm clean and sober, I realize, I was with some people that I had no right being with. Not that I was better than them, but what they were doing was something I would have never have done if I wasn't addicted to booze and drugs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and, you know, Eddie had talked about earlier about, you know, some people find different types of recovery, and that's all well and good. But for me, it is total abstinence.
Yep.
You know, to think that I can, you know, have a few drinks and maybe smoke a joint or whatever every once in a while. I just don't think that would work for me because for me, I only speak for myself. And I know the big book of recovery was written, Alcoholics Anonymous, the book itself was written back in the 30s. And I know things have changed and we're in a different society. But the premise of it, the way it's written, it's almost like the Bible. It's there and it just makes so much sense to me. And I can read the same step over and over and over again, the same chapter over and over again. But I always get a different meaning out of it every time.
Well, that book is there for us addicts and alcoholics to become normal. If you and actually the big book is a good book to read. If you're not even in recovery, for family members struggling, you can read that book and get a kind of a sense of who we are and what we do. And we need this. It's a guide. It's a guidance for our lives because our lives were so unmanageable, so crazy, just filled with insanity, that this book brings us back down to where we need to be, living like a normal human being. We have problems just like everybody else. Yeah. We deal with problems just like everybody else does. But in our addiction, we didn't do that. We dealt with it different ways. And I never would recommend anybody doing that. And especially if you have a loved one out there, that's what's going on right now. If you're listening to this show and you're a family member and, you know, you want to know how they're thinking. This is how they're thinking, Mike. I mean, they're thinking insane. Sure. So for them to make a decision to go into treatment or to get better or I'm going to get better, it's not there. It's not there. That's what intervention is for. That's what Mike is for. That's what I do. We kind of make them see that moment of clarity to open up their eyes and say, okay, well, my way didn't work. Let's try your way now. You know,
when I want to put a pep in my step, I can sit down and read steps 1, 2, and 3 in the step book or in the big book. But for me, how it works, there's a chapter in the big book called How It Works, and then there's another chapter, The Family Afterwards. When I want to really feel on top of the world and realize what I'm doing is right, I'm very fortunate. I don't know about you two, but I don't have any desire to drink a drug today. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I haven't had it, but nothing like I used to. And in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I'd be at a spot where I didn't want to do some drugs or drink some alcohol, because that's all I thought about. I was obsessed with it. As soon as I woke up, before I'd pass out. But now I'm in a place where I'm full of gratitude, and I don't have any desire. But if you have a chance, you can Google it, get the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, it's called. Read one of those chapters, How It Works, and The Family Afterwards. And I guarantee you're going to understand a lot more about yourself than you ever thought you knew.
And that's people not in recovery. You'll definitely understand it. And the big book is definitely is a good read, and it'll help you understand us too. There's always alcohol. There's always AA meetings, but for the families, there's Al-Anon to understand a little bit more. Al-Anon is a program for our loved ones to go into to understand us, how not to enable us, how not to let us do what we do. Because even in recovery, again, we can be enabled, and we can get those. We may not drink 25, 30 and how many years? 15? Sweet? 15 years sober?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
So we have all this time together, but if we don't work a program, if we don't talk and listen to each other and run things by us, we can be we can be a dry drunk. Right. It's even worse.
You can lose it. You can lose your sobriety. Sobriety is a gift. No matter how you want to look at it, people don't beat themselves on the chest and say, I've been sober 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I did it on my own. We know that's not true.
No.
We do it through the grace of God or your God of your understanding and through the workings, for me anyway, of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous.
Absolutely.
Because if I was just doing it on my own, what you said, dry drunk, that would be me.
Yeah.
No matter what you choose, it's about a new way of life.
Yes.
New way of life.
My new way of life came through the steps. If your new way of life comes through some other form, then so be it.
So be it. But we're all on the same path of where we want to go.
Don't just get sober. Heal from the addiction.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. And it's not. And I'll close with this. It's not the destination. It's the journey here. And I know you hear that a lot out there, but it's so true. For the addicts, it's the journey that we're on, and there is no destination. We listen. We have all this time here. All of us together have a lot of time, but we do it just like the man or woman who's walking into treatment today. 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time. I remember doing it 1 minute at a time. I couldn't even think of not having a drink when I was in rehab, and they're giving me all kinds of medications to do it. You know, it's just we do it all the same way. If anybody tells you different, they're full of shit, because this is exactly how you do it.
That's right. And hey, what a great show.
Absolutely.
Friends of Recovery podcast, podcasting live from our brand new studio in Beverly, Mass. Sweet Studio. Sweets, thanks for being here today.
Yep, Sweets, thank you.
All the time. I'll be here all the time.
That's
guys.
it.
That's right.
It.
Thank you very much for everything you've done for us.
Yep.
We're looking forward to our new way of life
New
coming
endeavor
out here.
Yeah, and drop us an email. Tell us what you think of the studio. Give us some feedback. We love to know, what you think of it, because you guys are avid listeners, and you're the reason why we're here. We're talking to you, and we want to get the help out for you guys. So drop us an email or call one of us for help, and that's all I got, Mike.
Okay, Ed.
Thank you, guys.
Friends of Recovery podcast.
Take care, everybody. Stay sober.
That concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for supporting those on the path to recovery and for keeping this valuable resource free for our Friends in Recovery community. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. If you can't get enough of Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, you can catch them on Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast, available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube.